Hi guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I am doing a video from my parents' house once again, like that one a few weeks ago. And today's video is talking about NBA Coach of the Year for the 2017-2018 season. So this is a hotly contested award. I think that you could argue that between 5 to 10 coaches could deserve this, which is why I'm not going to rank the ones that I think could deserve it or do a countdown or anything. I'm just going to talk about 5 different coaches and why I think each of them have a legitimate reason to or reasons to be Coach of the Year this year. So I'm going to not the ones that I would say who are the honorable mentions would be Alvin Gentry of the Pelicans for doing so well without DeMarcus Cousins for a lot of the season, and maybe Popovich for getting 47 wins without Kawhi Leonard the whole season and having to deal with that. But those are just honorable mentions. They did good jobs, but I don't really think they're in the Coach of the Year conversation. But I do think that there are 5 guys who are in the conversation, and so I'm going to start talking about those right now. These are in no particular order, and I think that each has a legitimate reason or more than one reason why they should be Coach of the Year. But I'll pick one definitive one at the end, but I think that you could pick any of these guys, and it wouldn't really be the wrong answer. So the first of which I'm going to talk about is Mike D'Antoni. So he won the award last year with the Rockets. They had 56 wins last year. They upped that to 65 this year, had the best record in the NBA. And, I think that they were a great team this year, and a large part of it was due to him and his great system. But I think the thing that we have to look at is, did they exceed their expectations? And, man, I don't know. Their win prediction for the beginning of the season was 56, so they did exceed that. They scored a lot higher than that, but they got 9 wins over that. But I don't really know if I think that they did a lot better by and large. I was expecting them to be in the 60-win range, and so, I think that they more stood out because the Warriors were bad rather than that they were being outstanding. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that the Rockets were great this year, and I am a Rockets fan, and I think that Harden and CP and everybody just played to the best of their potential. But, I think the reason that they seem more impressive is because you didn't have the Warriors winning like 70 games. If the Warriors had won, say, 70 games and the Rockets had still only won 65, they wouldn't seem as impressive. An example of this is when the Spurs won 67 games 2 years ago, and no one really even talked about it because the Warriors had won 73. So I think it's a case of that sort of, in that they are being talked about because the Warriors had a down regular season. But that aside, they were highly impressive, and I can't take anything away from them. And it's a big part of it is D'Antoni's system. So, in a little recap, did they exceed expectations? Maybe on a projected win total, yes, but for my own, not really. They performed about what I expected in the 60-win range, maybe a few higher because the Warriors were a bit worse this year. But basically, they met my expectations, and I'll really have to judge it more on continued success because, although this was a great year, CP is turning 33 or is already 33. I'm not sure which. I know he's at least turning it in the next year. So the whole outlook for the team really depends on him being able to keep up his superstar play. But for this season, they played great, and I think Mike D'Antoni could make a case why he should be Coach of the Year. The best record in the NBA always has an argument for that. Now, moving on, the next guy I'm going to do is Dwayne Casey of the Toronto Raptors, who actually, Dwayne was recently fired, but I think he did a really good job this year, and just because you're fired doesn't mean you can't win Coach of the Year in the NBA. just ask George Karl. He got fired after the 2012-2013 season, and he was Coach of the Year that year. Um, you know, he's got a great case. He got the most out of a lot of role players who on any other team probably wouldn't have been that good. He got Toronto to play within a system, and they played better than the sum of their parts. I feel like 59 wins was tremendous for that core that seemed to be topping out at around 54 to 50 in between there, and they got 5 wins better than I would have thought. Top team in the East, second best team in the league. So very impressive. And really, when you got guys like OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, when those types of guys can be huge contributors, that just speaks volumes to the coach and the coaching staff. They're able to dial in and get those guys to be focused and be prepared to play. Some of that can be from personal growth too, but I think that just Dwayne Casey's coaching style really helped those guys develop, and he had a lot of confidence in them. And it's not like in the key moments of critical games he would take them out and only put in the starters and only let them play and shoot. He would let them stick it out sometimes. And in games against even Washington in the first round of this year's playoffs, there were times where they would be down and he would just leave the bench in, and then they would come back and rally a bit. So I think he was impressive in that he showed confidence in a bench and allowed them to develop. And, Dwayne Casey should not be frowned upon because he got fired. I think he only got fired because the team is stagnant and they've really just been the same team for about 5 years. But it's not his fault. He did really good. And, I think that if it weren't for LeBron James, they'd be in the finals. But just because of that one guy, they seem to be mentally distraught whenever they have to play him. But 59 wins, the 1 seed, the second best team in the NBA. I don't know what more you can ask for. So, Dwayne, good job. And if I had to pick one of these guys I'm talking about who I think will win it, not who I think should win it, but who I predict will win it, I think that Dwayne will win it. He just seems like the favorite. He led Toronto to their highest win total in the history of the franchise, which seems like a thing that people always regard. So I could see it. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Quinn Snyder, who I think did a really good job in Utah, coach of the Jazz. They started out 11-30, and they finished with, I think, 48 wins. So that means that they won. They went. Let's see here. What would it be? 37-4 over the last stretch. That might be a bit too high. My math is off right now, but they went from 11-30 to a 48-34 team, which is highly impressive. No, I'm doing all this math wrong. I'm sorry, guys. They weren't 11-30, but they were like 20. They had some awful record. They were 23-30, and they finished 48-34. So they went like 25-4 over their last 29 games. That's what it is. Okay. But they were without Rudy Gobert for a ton of the season, and I think that the fact that they still persevered and when he got back thought that they could get into the playoffs and ultimately get to the second round, I think that that's really impressive. And a guy that can motivate his players and empower them to keep going even in that state of adversity, I think that speaks a great deal to his coaching ability. And he made these guys who I didn't think would be that good, like Joe Ingles. I have to give Joe Ingles props. I never really considered him very good, but he did really good in these playoffs and this season. And he really, I think, developed a lot, and a lot of people are going to start to take notice of him. Just other guys like Ryan O'Neal, who I never would pay much mind to. He was a serviceable backup. Dante Exum, who hasn't played much in the time since he's even been drafted, was a big contributor in the playoffs. Ricky Rubio had his best season ever. which is tough to see as a Wolves fan for him to leave and finally improve a lot. Donovan Mitchell, I greatly exceeded expectations. So just as you can see, a lot of players just playing above the level that they were expected to play at. And I think that some of that can come from personal self-motivation, but I think that a great deal of that too comes from coaching. And so I got to hand it to Quinn Snyder. He did a good job to turn a team that could have been the 12 seed in the West into the 4 seed. So that's highly impressive. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Terry Stotts, coach of the Blazers. I think that Terry Stotts had a really good season, regular season, let me say. You know, some of his coaching weaknesses came out in the playoffs when they got swept by the Pelicans, but this is an award based on the regular season, so I'm going to talk about the regular season. They had 49 wins. They were the 3 seed in the West. They, exceeded expectations greatly. I thought that they'd be around 43, 44 wins, so they were about 5 or 6 higher than that, which is really good. And, Dame and CJ just really played well. I can't really say that either developed because they basically played at the level that we knew that they were capable of playing at. But they just, they played at their same level, but just in ways that helped their team win games, which may not make a ton of sense. But it just, in the critical moments, they played up to how they could, up to their potential. And so they were able to win more games than they normally would. If you look at that Blazers roster, outside of those two, they do not really have a good team. Nurkic is okay, but I don't know. He's honestly the definition of average center. So yeah. But besides that, their main guys besides those 3 are Evan Turner, Al-Farouq Aminu, and Mo Harkless, who, they're all NBA players, but they're all fringe starters. I don't think that any of those guys is really worthy of 30 minutes game. I feel like each is more worthy of around 15 to 20 and more of just a guy that comes in for a short bit and contributes a little, but you can't really count on any of those guys to be clutch. So I think the fact that Terry Stotts got to the 3 seed in the tough West, this is a conversation for a different video, but I don't think the West is as good as people always say it is. They were the 3 seed, which is impressive. Even though they got swept in the playoffs, they had an impressive regular season. And I'm not going to hold his coaching decisions in the playoffs against him because it's a regular season award. So, he's in the conversation. He probably doesn't get it, though. So, yeah. The next guy I have is Brett Brown. I don't have much to say about this. I think that Philadelphia played really well. I expected them to be about a 48-win team, and they won 52 games, so they were right around what I thought that they would get. I think that they really performed well, though, considering that Embiid was out for the last stretch of the season, and they had the 16-game win streak. That was really impressive that they had that. But really, I feel like they performed about what I expected. I really expected Ben Simmons to be all that he was hyped up to be, and he is and was this season. So they did really well. When they signed Redick, I really liked that move. I knew that would help them. But Brett Brown did a good job. He's really found a good way to mix and mesh all these players that he's got, all this really young talent, and get the most out of guys like Saric and Covington and Bellinelli and Ilyasova. Those are guys that you really can't count on individually, but when you get them moving in a system with Simmons, it's really impressive. So that's what I think of that. And moving on, the next guy I'm going to talk about is Nate McMillan of the Indiana Pacers. I really like McMillan. I think that he coached a great season this year. They won 49 games in the East, which was good enough for the 5th seed. And I don't know. I just really like this season and this guy a lot, and just his coaching style and everything. The Pacers were expected to be a low lottery team. So the fact that they were the 5th seed and we're one game away from being in the second round is very impressive. Victor Oladipo took great strides. That's probably more from his own workouts during the summer. If you look into Victor Oladipo workouts during the summer, he totally changed his regiment and really started to work a lot harder and everything. And he really came into this season trying to prove himself, and he did. But some people might attribute that to just his workout or the fact that he's playing a ton more minutes than the primary option. But I also think it has something to do with the coaching too. A coach has to just implement everything right and make sure the cohesion works between the players, and has to coach them up in his style and his system. And it's not like you can just throw a player out there and without any guidance they'll get the points. I think that you have to have a coach to do some guiding. And again, it's a sort of a similar thing to the Blazers, I think, in that you look outside of Oladipo, they really don't have that many great players, in that they're kind of having to make do with not having very much. Thaddeus Young, Miles Turner, Darren Collison, Lance Stevenson, Sabonis, none of those guys are a bona fide second option on a playoff team. But, they all did well. Miles Turner is supposed to be the second option, but his development is not going how I thought it would. He seems like a guy that's going to tap out at around 16 and 10, whereas a lot of people thought that he could be 25 and 12. I don't know about that. That seems a bit much for him. He seems more like a second or third option on a really good team rather than a first option on a good team. But yeah, Nate McMillan doing a great job with Collison, who is a borderline backup point guard. Thaddeus Young, who's a really good sixth man, I would say. And Miles Turner, whose development is stagnating a bit. And Lance Stevenson, who is, crazy. So I don't know. I really liked how McMillan handled the team in the season, and I think that they have a really promising future ahead of them. So the final guy I'm going to talk about in this video is Brad Stevens. And I guess if I have to pick one guy who's my winner, I'm going to pick Brad Stevens, because they didn't have Hayward for most of the season. They didn't have Kyrie for half of the season. He has the best system in basketball. He just gets everyone to play above their talent level. Terry Rozier in this playoffs is looking like a legit NBA starter when he's not really, I don't think. As we saw last year to this year, Isaiah Thomas is a shell of himself, and I don't think it's because he went down in talent level. I think it's because Brad Stevens' system elevates players. So all that being said, I think that Brad Stevens really gets these guys to play hard. He gets them to play defense, which is key. You have guys like Marcus Morris playing some of the best ball of his life. Along with that, you're getting guys like Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are developing tremendously under the system of sharing the ball and spreading the love. And, this team, I don't know what the ceiling is, because they seem like they're destined for greatness in the future. And I think that Brad Stevens is just as important as any player they have, because it's evident from the Isaiah Thomas thing and Terry Rozier that, regardless of the players, they are going to be a very good team. It's sort of like a Popovich system, in that it's more about the system and the scheme and the ball movement than it is about the player, and it's more just about a team effort and creating open shots than it is about one heroic basketball player. But all that being said, if I have to pick one of these guys to win, I'm picking Brad Stevens. They won 54 games this year. I would predicted them to win about 50, in that range, so that was pretty impressive. Between 50 and 55 would have been my prediction, but considering that both Hayward and Irving were out, the 54 was really impressive. Irving was there for half the year, excuse me. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. These guys are going to be great in the future. They're great now already. And a lot of, you got to contribute it to Brad Stevens, his motivation, his next man up mentality, and just getting these guys to really play their hearts out. So that's it, guys. Those are some of the guys that I think would be worthy of Coach of the Year. I think they each have their own reasons why. There's not really a wrong pick this year. You have a lot of different guys that would be worthy. I really like Nate McMillan. I think that he, if I wouldn't have picked Stevens, I probably would have picked him. But besides that, I don't have really any clear-cut favorite. So yeah, all those guys are great. I think I went through about 7 guys there. I might have said at the beginning I was going to do 5, but just as I was talking, I thought of more of them, so I included them. Yeah, but hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.